Hello everybody, it is Ebontis, and in this video, I'm hoping that I can take the rumors that Path of Exile 2 is too hard, break down the systems, give you some guidance, kind of show you what to watch out for and look for, and then hopefully by the time you're done watching this video, you're excited to jump in, you feel comfortable to hit the ground running, and with a few tweaks and finding some decent gear, hopefully you'll have a really good experience in here. Now, I'm not going to say the game is easy, it is a challenge, I've died myself, but I don't mind dying to bosses like 4 or 5 times on fights, because then beating them actually feels like an accomplishment as opposed to face melting everything I walk through. So it is going to be a bit more of a challenge, but I've enjoyed a lot here, and hopefully with what I tell you guys today, you can have a good experience as well. Now, before I actually get into any of the game systems, quick options that you might want to look into. For the game itself, gem cutting restrictions and equipment restrictions, I would probably just leave these on. They're going to help you make some mistakes that you might not want to. If you're playing with friends that are at different level, if you have the level downscaling on, basically if I'm level 20 and I'm playing with a buddy who's level 5, if this is enabled and they join my party, I'm going to be down at their level and they get experience as normal. If you try and pull somebody through, it's not really going to work either way. So all I'm saying is probably just leave it on. Don't worry about that one. As for the interface, you can mess with things like, do you want the map in the corner? Do you want the map to pop a little bit more? Do you want ally names on the map? This is all kind of interface stuff. Screen shake, if it bothers you, turn it off. Couple things here, items always show sockets. I just like the quick visual indicator of a socket's there, so I don't even have to think about it. Support gem pop-up, I'll show you what that's all about, but I would leave that on. Gameplay, do you want to see enemy health bars? Do you want a life bar above your head? Do you want to see aura icons? Mess with all this stuff, whatever works for you, whatever doesn't. Do you want a big, giant, green mouse icon? Do it. Biggest thing about these is do a little trial and error, see what works. Do you like the map a little bigger? Do you like the contrast on the map? Like, do I pull it up and really want to see it? Do I want it a bit more transparent and just care about the outline as opposed to the environment? Mess with whatever works for you, because as you get done messing with these settings, you're going to be spending a few hours looking at this type of stuff, so it makes things a little bit easier. Now, the waypoint system is basically going to be your journey through the campaign. There's going to be other stuff you get to later on, but this is what kind of the world map is going to look like. You're going to start down here, fight this boss to kind of initiate yourself and get into the encampment, and then you'll work through these levels and do different things as you go. Each of these is kind of like a zone. So you'll see that I've got branching paths, but from the Grellwood, I also have the option to go into the Red Veil. Well, in the Red Veil, you'll find a boss in there, the Rust King, you'll do that. And you'll notice these little icons, these little skulls that you can kind of tell. Most of mine are all grayed out because I've gone through and found everything. I can show you one in Act 2 that's going to be a little easier to see. Like, this is a skull of a boss that's been beaten. This is a skull of a boss that's been beaten, but has a little icon to say this is going to give you something. And basically this opens up a path to go somewhere else, which is up here. And then this, like, more light, normal colored skull that's not just grayed out is something that has not been beaten. Now, if you come down here, I've cleared everything out from, you know, finding Renly's workshop and finding his tools, which is something you'll want to do, so make sure you do that. Una's hut. This one actually has a little plus. Renly's tools, that's actually a quest. But anything that has this little holy cross-looking thing next to it, notice how they also have a description under it. Grants 2 weapon set passive skill points. Grants 2 skill points. Plus 30 to spirit. Plus 10 to cold resistance. Final boss in this one, by the way, FYI, cold damage, so keep the cold resistance in mind. But if you miss out on any of this kind of stuff, you'll be kind of doing two things. If you miss out on bosses, it's not the end of the world, but you'll be missing out on potential loot drops that are going to help you be more equipped, possibly, you know, more equipped for bosses as well. If you missed out on any of these, like, permanent buffs, like plus 30 to spirit, and you just don't, you know, from the hunting grounds, you don't find the entrance into Freythorn, and you don't go find this guy and beat him, you just won't have spirit. So at some point, you are going to want to go and beat these at some point. But as you kind of work through the journey, my advice is two things. One, when you get to a destination, like where I'm at right now, you see the map, I would explore every corner of the map. Because one, you never quite know what a chest is going to hold. A random chest might hold a little more than you think, which is going to be a good thing. And they also may hold junk. You never know. But if you're going to spend time like walking around a level, trying to find the area to get to the next objective, that kind of thing, you'll have explored a decent amount of the map. So you may as well uncover every nook and cranny. And that way you're also going to make sure you uncover each one of the random side bosses that could be waiting for you and any side areas. Like this one you're going to have to go to for a quest, but if you're in the cemetery, you might go to both of these. Some of these I think are a little more required and guided when you go through the campaign, But say up here, when you go to this territory for the count, the Candlemass may be somebody you miss, or a fight that you maybe don't beat, or you find him difficult. But look, he's going to give you plus 20 to maximum life. Kind of nice to have that when you're early on and health is a little hard to come by. So if you can beat him, makes the final boss in the territory, the big guy, a little bit more manageable. So it is kind of one of those things that I would explore a little bit, try and find as much as you can, because you're bound to find stuff that's going to pay off and be worthwhile, and some of the permanent buffs are things you really do not want to miss. Hey everybody, it's Ebontis. Wanted to thank the sponsor of this video real quick, Ekster Wallets. I've been using theirs for coming up on about 6 months now, and I really like them. So I started with the leather wallet, so it's got the flap if you got that old school style. Main feature is the card holder. Both of them have this. There's just a slimmer version. Press a button, cards pop out, grab the one you need. When you're done, slide it back in, spot will still be waiting, and you're good to go. After this one for a while, they actually kind of got me another one to try, and I love this one. It's the card holder, so it's even thinner than what I had before, and this is still thinner than the wallet that I had. I only need my cards. I've got wallet, insurance card, couple credit cards, driver's license, gym ID. Literally press a button, cards pop out, grab the one you need. When you're done, slide them back in and waiting. Easy. And then in the back, I've actually got this find my card back here. So it's this little thing that kind of sticks in the back expandable section. Back here in the back, if I lose my wallet for whichever reason, you can actually have it play a sound. And when it plays the sound, you should be able to hear it, whether it's like sitting on top of your fridge, sitting in a weird part on your house, maybe you dropped it in a movie theater somewhere. Whatever may have happened, you should be able to hear that nice like pitch. It's a good, not too loud, but a good pitch so that you should be able to find it wherever it fell. And I've used that multiple times and it's been great. So I do highly recommend Ekster Wallets. Been using them for a while. With my code Ebontis, you can get up to 55% off during their Christmas sales. And I want to thank them for sponsoring this video. So thank you guys for that one. And now let's get back to the guide. So outside of going out in combat and exploring each one of those destinations that you get to completely to try and find everything that they can, I do recommend that, because whether it's a random, elite that you fight, or whether it's a total boss encounter that you might accidentally trip into, whatever it may be, those tend to be worthwhile, and then you're going to get a bunch of loot and bring it back to your camp. Now, in the camp, you've got a couple of different ways to interact with these NPCs that are going to be doing different things. They have different names, but a lot of them have the same functionality as you move forward in acts, or at least Act 1 and 2 have a similar idea. Renly's going to be a quest guy. He's going to be the one who's looking for his tools. You do want to make sure you find him so you can get the salvage bench, but we'll cover what that does a little later. And Renly, or later on, I think in Act 2, it's going to be like Shambrim, you're going to have somebody who sells gear, weapons, and armor, and they are going to have random rolls on them. You might have a rare in here. You're going to have a fair amount of like random magic stuff, and you're going to have just kind of a mix of things. That's what they're going to have, and then as you progress forward, different vendors have different things. The farther forward in the campaign, I think you'll probably be able to buy higher stuff, but I don't 100% know that for sure. And their inventories will also rotate, typically when you level up, probably on certain days or rotations, but their inventory will rotate every so often. Next person you're going to have is your gamble vendor. So this is Finn, later on it's going to be Risu, and this is just going to have one of each type of thing. So like a random bow, 867 gold. If I roll the dice, I will get a bow. I have no idea if it's going to be good, junk, or otherwise. That's part of it. When it comes to spending gold, there are a few places that you will be able to spend it, like your skill tree if you need to reset it. That gets expensive, so I'd recommend doing that early, but again, we'll cover that later. Occasionally, if you've got a little bit of gold and you do want to kind of feel like you're getting stuck in one point, these boots, for example, were one I gambled on. I bought about 3 sets of boots. I was getting some decent gold, and I'm like, I am like stuck. I really need an upgrade for boots, and I was trying not to spend some of my other currencies. Like, all right, I'll buy like 3 sets of boots. One of them ended up being rare, not perfect, but decent enough. Gave me a boost, so I'm rolling with it. So you've got your gamble vendor. Then you're going to have the hooded one. Now this guy is going to be with you for most of the campaign, I think. You unlock him being at your camp about 2/3 through Act 1, and he's got the ability to identify your items. So you're like Scrolls of Wisdom, basically identify a magic item to kind of figure out what the modifiers are. Once you get him unlocked, you no longer really need to worry about Scrolls of Wisdom outside of using those while you're running around. But if you bring stuff back to any of the camps, you're going to be able to use him to identify stuff for free, which is really nice. He's also going to be the one who's going to refund your passives. So, like, if you go into the skill tree, I'll cover this a little later, but if, say, I want to unallocate this one, for example, I can spin the gold through him, One little piece of advice, by the way, there are some of these that are just going to be a stat roll, like +5 to an attribute. If you just want to change the attribute, you can actually do that even though it's in the middle of a chain, as opposed to if I want to change this, for example, I would have to break all of these back down into, you like spin the gold to go all the way in reverse to change this one out. If it's a stat, you can change the stat with just spinning the gold, even if it's in the middle of a chain. So nice thing that they did there for quality of life. So he's going to identify your items and also kind of reverse your skill trees that you've got there. The final one is where you're going to be spending a pretty good amount of time, and that's Una. The next stage, it's going to be Zarka. She is going to sell magical items. Again, they could be rare, they could be magic, they could be pretty basic, depending on what's going on. Also going to have some of these flasks and that type of stuff, especially when you get to the later section. But she's also going to disenchant. What disenchant does is it's going to take a piece of gear, like a magic item, and it's going to disenchant it into an orb of transmutation. I'll explain what those do in a little bit. Take a rare piece of gear. It's going to break that down into a Regal shard. So these are all shards that turn into a big one once you accumulate enough. She's not going to do anything with basic gear, because there's nothing for her to break down. There's no magical properties to it. So she's going to disenchant into currencies that you're going to be able to use later, and I'll break down what all of that does. So that's your main vendors and what you're going to do with them. Now what I want to do is basically unpack the idea of progressing through your gear, why you might pick up a very basic white piece of gear and take that all the way to rare through some of the currencies that you have, and that's going to be a big piece. Again, timestamps are in there, use them if you need to. Quick thing, by the way, my stash may look different than yours. Basically, all I did is if you buy a copy of this game, what you're going to realize is you're going to have about 1,000 points up here, and this is all the microtransactions, so it's $30 for early access. What I spent mine on is the Exile stash bundle and the quad tab bundle, so I have more pages in my stash. That's all that you're seeing in here. If you want to spend it on armor, go absolutely nuts. There's some cool stuff. I just wanted some functional stash tabs. That is why what you're going to see in here looks probably a little bit different than what you're going to have. So just ignore that. You have 1,000 points, spend them how you want to. Now, quick run through on gear. Base level piece of gear, it's white. It is common, there's no modifiers to it. Now, it has a potential to have a base intrinsic item, kind of like this. So this is going to be a implicit like modifier to it. So the linen belt, for example, is always going to have increased mana recovery from flasks. That's just what it's going to do. Now, if I have another belt in here that I can show you guys, that's not a belt. There's a belt. The wide belt is going to have an increased flask charges gained. That's the implicit thing that is on there. So whether it's a magic item, has any modifiers or not, some things are going to have just an implicit thing built in, and some will not, but these are both uncommon. Like this up here has the implicit modifier, gain 2 life per enemy hit with attacks. I use that very frequently, so it's a nice one that I've got in there. But again, even just on a basic sacral quiver, that's still going to be there. The other 2 lines wouldn't be. Then you've got magic. Magic is going to be these blue types, all of these things that I'm kind of showing you here. They can have suffixes, they can have prefixes. So like a rough greaves of thick skin. Of thick skin is going to give me stun threshold benefit. Over here, we've got the fire quiver of triumph. So 14 life per enemy killed. That's not too shabby. Up here, I've got the burnished, which is going to be add 3 to 5 physical damage to attacks. And then of the links is going to be the dexterity. That's how those go. When you get up to the rare category, and the key about magic is you can only have 1 suffix and 1 prefix. So you can have the implicit, which is just there no matter what, and then the magic cap out at 1 and 1. So 1 suffix, 1 prefix. When you get all the way up to rare, you can have the implicit, but you're also going to have the option for up to 3 prefixes and up to 3 suffixes. And when you get these types of things, when you add stuff and take it away, they're just going to have names. Like these are Behemoth Knuckles Stitched Gloves. Or whatever, they're Stitch Gloves, they're Behemoth Knuckles. That's just the name of it. If I added a modifier, might even change the name to it. This one up here, this is the Skull Shroud. Vagabond Armor is like the general category that it's going to be, but I've got 6. I've got 3 prefix, 3 suffix. That is the tiers. Obviously, having 6 modifiers is going to make you a heck of a lot stronger than nothing. You're going to start here, work your way up. Now, when it comes to the game, when I was saying you take a piece of magical gear and you would take it to Una. She would disenchant it, and if it's of this tier, of the blue magical tier, you're going to get a transmutation shard. Get 10 of those, it's going to turn into an Orb of Transmutation right here. What this will do is it will take a normal item, so one of these, for example, and it will turn it magical with one modifier. So it would literally look like this. So if I take the wrap sandals and I modify it, now it has plus 15 maximum energy shield. Done. So now that is a magical tiered item. Now you notice this one has 2 modifiers. Right now I've only got a prefix. Well, the Orb of Augmentation, so far only finding these in the wild, not really kind of accumulating shards to create them, but you'll find them randomly, augments a magic item with a new random modifier. So it's going to take the plus 15 maximum energy, leave it there, and then this, if I applied it, which I'm not going to because I don't want to spend them all, it would add another modifier to these wrapped sandals. So that way you'd have 2 modifiers. Then you have an option. If you like what you got going on with the first Orb of Transmutation, maybe you're like, okay, that's a pretty good benefit. Then you can spin an Orb of Augmentation, roll the dice on the second one. Be like, okay, kind of like this one I've got here. I've got a good base with the life per hit, and then I've got the physical and the dexterity. Can I make this better? Well, actually, yes, you can. You can take it to the rare tier. It's just going to be a currency that's going to be much more rare, so you got to be a bit more stingy where you use these. The Regal Orb, and again, if you break down the stitched, like the rare items with Una, she's going to give you these Regal Shards. Get 10, you're going to have a Regal Orb. So if I wanted to spend a Regal Orb on this quiver, I could turn it to a rare and add another modifier, so I'd be up to 3. But there's a total of 6 modifiers that it can hold. Well, at that point, if you have enough Exalted Orbs, you add another rare modifier to that rare item to cover number 4, then do it again for 5, and then do it again if you want to take it all the way up to 6 modifiers on one item. So, base level items, Orb of Transmutation turns it magical. Orb of Augmentation gives it that second modifier. If you think those 2 are off to a pretty good start, and maybe you're at a point where you're like, I really need to, you know, try and build myself a better piece of gear. And the thing that I would say is if you're thinking about taking something to rare, picture where you are in the game. This is a level 16 item. I'm 23, but this quiver is dropping as a pretty high level. I don't want to take like a level, I don't know, 4 quiver. That's a very base level item, and try and make it rare because it's not going to have the benefits at the tier that I'm looking for because I'm in Act 2. I don't need to take like a base Act 1 quiver just to make it rare because it's kind of cool. You do want to make sure you're kind of staying current with the stuff that is dropping around your level and from the act that you're working with. So you could make it magical, and then if you're digging everything you've got, you can turn it to rare, and then if you got enough Exalted Orbs, keep adding those modifiers, and hopefully they roll in your favor. And that's kind of where the RNG is going to play out. Now, I've only seen one of these so far, Orb of Alchemy. This would take a normal item and make it a rare item like this with 4 modifiers. Just straight to it, skip everything in between. At some point, I'm probably going to find a reason to use this, but I don't want to do it right now. Main reason is because it's a big gamble. Nice thing about going through Transmutation in this one is you can see if like the base of the weapon or piece of gear is actually, you know, got a couple good rolls to start, as opposed to throwing a few of them away. If you do this one, you might get some good, you might get some bad. So that is the general progression of how you're going to go through. And again, if you are going to take something to rare, try and make sure it's something relatively current, or just wait until you get like a decent drop. If you roll the dice on something and it doesn't go great, that's just going to happen, but that's how it's going to go. So again, base level item can actually be turned all the way into a really good rare item if you roll the dice and it all works out. And then once you get enough stuff going, you may commit and just get, you know, 4 out of 6 being good, but it's still nice to have some pretty beefy items on you to help you be more powerful. So that is the general progression of gear and shards and how you work through those. Now, you've got a couple of other things. You've got quality improvements that you can do, and then you can also add sockets, so you can add runes to items. Quality is going to take an item, say currently quality on this is plus 12%, and that's going to add plus 12% to your base damage. And if you want to check, this is something you can do. If you want to inspect something, hold Alt, and then come in here, and you can actually look at quality, and if you click on it, you're able to actually just straight up read it. So quality grants small bonuses. Weapons, you're going to get 1% physical. Armors gain 1% more defense. Flasks gain a little bit more. Charms gain a little bit more. Skill gems, that type of stuff. Like, you can do quite a bit. And again, we'll get to all of that stuff as you get later into the game. But these are little things that you can actually put onto a piece of gear and you can get them back. Same with sockets. The thing is, like, once you start leveling up something bigger, and you put quality into it, and you put sockets into it, if you want to get those back, you won't be able to dismantle this for the, like, Regal Shards. You're going to be going for the other pieces that are in there. So, if, for example, I had a piece of gear that had sockets on it, like this one, for example, and I'm going to move this, for example, what you can do is, if you see anything that has sockets, or you see something that has quality, like the Superior Helm, when you find Renly's tools, you're going to unlock the Salvage bench. And you'll notice, once the Salvage bench is available and you click the bench, it's going to highlight the items that you can actually use the Salvage bench on. So if I did the quality, since it's got a quality benefit, it's going to give me a couple of those quality currencies. If I did it on anything with sockets, it's going to break it down for Artificer's Shards. So if we come back here and we check Artificer's Shards, you get 10 of them, you're going to be able to make an Artificer's Orb, which again adds a whole socket to a piece of gear. So my advice is, any pieces of gear that you get that have sockets on them, before you find his tools, stick them in one of your 4 stash tabs and save them. That way, when you unlock the ability to, you know, salvage, then you're going to be able to get those socket currencies out. If you see anything with quality, same thing. You've got 4 base tabs to start, all of these. Save them, again, anything with quality, and you can break them down a little bit later. And that's something you're always going to want to do. If you find anything with quality, make sure you salvage it. If you find anything with sockets, break that down and salvage it. When it comes to breaking gear down, if it's base magical, you know, I can break this down and I could get 1 transmutation shard. But guess what? I have 25 orbs of transmutation. I'm good on those. I've broken down plenty of magical items, so it is much more valuable for me to get the socket currency, because that's going to be a bigger benefit long run. Same thing, it's like I can't even do anything with the basic helm, but if you've got quality on it, again, better to pull the quality out than get the magical shard. As for rares, if it's a rare item and it's socketed, depending on where you're at in the game, I would probably say early on, it's going to be more advantageous to get these Regal Shards unless they start bumping up the currency drop rate. If it has 1 socket, that's 1 shard, but these are going to be much more powerful to make something rare as opposed to add a socket. You're going to want to probably find a rare item before you actually put a socket in it, and you can probably find sockets from everything else. So that's your quality and also socket things, and that's why you want to find Renly's tools when you're out there on the farm. Let me look at the destination. When you're at the farmlands, wander around that destination to find Una's hut, so you can get the 2 skill points. And then when you're at the village, make sure you find the workshop. That's where you're going to find his tools. And it'll tell you, like, it's in Augmentation Village, so you know where it's at. That one's on the farmlands, so you can always mouse over. So I think that covers everything related to gear, rarity, using your orbs and shards, and your ability to kind of progress something all the way up to a highest tier. And then also covers the sockets, quality, salvage bench. I think we're good there. Now, as I said, once you add a socket to something, the socket is there. The only way you're going to get that socket back out, remember you would break it down for 1 currency, and it takes 10 to put the socket in there, so choose wisely. But once you do, you're going to be able to add runes. Now, the runes I've got so far are Glacial, adding cold damage or cold resist, lightning damage, lightning resist, fire damage, fire resist, physical damage or defense, and then the body rune is actually life or leeching, which the leeching one really has me intrigued. I'll be curious how that one is. These are the runes that I've found so far. I'm sure we'll find some other ones later on. The chance orb, if you break down a unique, now there's 1 more tier of gear, and a unique is going to be just exactly what it is. The luminous paste straw sandals, they do specific things. I found this one at like level 8, so hopefully I can get a better version of this later on. But I did find one. If you go to break one of these down, which I did not, but I found one of these chance shards anyway, an orb of chance is going to take a normal item, like this basic guy, and it's either going to destroy it, or it's going to turn it straight up into a unique. So it's just going to skip the whole fun and give you a unique out of it. Obviously, that's a roll of the dice, and at some point, that's just a gamble you'll take once you get some of those. Not even close to doing that yet. Same thing also when you're doing quality, weapons, armor, flasks. You can improve the quality of your flask. So it would take this one and increase the quality. And once you're done with the flask, you'll be able to probably get some glassblower shards maybe out, I would imagine. And then hopefully when you're done, you'll be able to, or you'll just get the glassblower's baubles back if you break this one down when you're done with it. And that's the biggest thing I can say. This whole process of leveling up gear, going through the process of either adding sockets or making it rare or adding modifiers, do it wisely and do it sparingly. As you're going through the game, you are going to want to make sure you kind of keep pace on gear. If I'm level 23 and I've got a pair of gloves that is, well, this is a prime example. Level 11, I am lacking in the gloves department. Now the modifiers are doing okay. Intelligence I probably don't need, but some life, some resistance, some life on hit is what I'm really using, and some lightning damage to attacks. But honestly, these all could be better. Because what you'll notice is, on some of these pieces of gear, the prefix, they're tier 1 and tier 2. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look over there, they're like T1, T2, and then T2, T1, T1. If I come here in the middle, I've got T2, T2, T3, T2, just better tiers of even modifiers, because you get a higher level item. So at some point, your gear is just going to fall behind. So I wouldn't say rush the idea of trying to turn something into rare, but at some point, if you're missing a piece and you're struggling with where you are, or maybe like I finally had to like get a bow, put some quality into it. I rolled the dice and I basically made it rare and just kind of committed once I found a couple of recurve bows. You know, I got a decent starting set of stats, and then I rolled the dice on a Regal and just like kind of fully committed, so I've got a good roll now. But I had to do that at some point because I just wasn't finding a great bow that I loved, and it just took that kind of commitment. If you are struggling with certain fights, sorry, I keep doing that when I'm looking for the map. You can change that hotkey, by the way. M is not map, it's microtransactions, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, Big Boss, that was a hard fight. I had to tweak a few things. He needs cold resistance, so something like finding rings that have cold resistance and cold resistance actually really helped. So that was kind of the point of when I say the game being difficult is one of two things. If I go back and fight him now, I'll cook him because I'm higher tiered gear. I understand things a bit more. You can learn a fight pretty well, which I was kind of getting decent at. But if your gear is not there, or say your resistance, like my cold resistance is 46 right now. That I'll discuss a little bit later when we get to the stats. But if my cold resistance was 0 and I was fighting him, that would be a problem. So pay attention to how things are feeling and where your gear is at. And if you got a couple pieces that are really starting to slack, you may need to farm around for a little bit of gear. All right, so outside of understanding the gear, which hopefully that system makes a lot more sense now, you've got your skill tree and your skills. So your passive skills are going to be buffs. So everybody's going to look something similar to this chaos, but you're going to start from a different direction. So my ranger, for example, starts down here, going this direction. There's a bow over here. There's a spear. You've got some options when you get later in whatever all the classes and weapons and everything that's going to be available. Remember, early access, we've only got half the classes and not all the weapons right now, so keep that in mind. But my brother, he was going witch. He started at this node and was going this direction. Because if you got things for spell damage and energy shield, versus down here, I've got projectile damage and evasion rating. So things are going to be kind of tailored to where you are. And don't let all of this get too crazy. Truly, if you take the point you're at and you head straight out the line, you're going to do okay. You really are, especially for an early build. Focusing on things like projectile damage. I fire arrows. It's pretty straightforward. Focusing on accuracy rating, so I have better chance at decent damage. Evasion, so my dodge, since my gear is all based around evasion, which I'll tell you about a little bit later, that's kind of one of those things I tagged on too. I had a chance to make my flasks a little more potent, so I did. And then we come up here, I've got the option for my quiver to have bigger benefits, so I tagged that one, grabbed a few stats along the way, and then I've got the option either go for a little bit movement speed and evasion rating, if I just kind of like bounce through here. And then if I come out here, where do I go from here? Well, I could go way over in this direction. Work on projectiles, have a chance to chain even more, which some of my build, that actually might be really good. Or I could just kind of keep coming straight out this direction. Like you could branch off, but still keep coming this way. If I'm close or far range with my projectiles, then I'm going to be able to get a bigger benefit for damage all the way across. And even up here, it's just more damage with bows. So if you take a second, just kind of read what is directly out from you, you're probably going to do okay for an initial starter build. When it comes later on for people like messing with things like, let me start here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then start messing with stuff this direction or over here, switching to different weapons from your base class, you can do some crazy things if you want to. I would not advise that for your first character until you really start to understand and experiment and toy with all of the systems in here. But the passive skill tree, not that scary if you just kind of go out in general. And as I told you, like if you pick a stat and it's not quite the right one or you need to switch it for a build, go to the hooded guy, and he can swap one in case you need stats for a certain piece of gear, which you'll need. And when I'm saying that here, if you look at the requires level 16 and 38 dexterity. I have 100 dexterity, so I'm doing fine. But some of these pieces of gear are going to be very specific in the stat they need. This one here in the middle, I needed 20 strength, so I actually did have to go into my passive tree and swap a couple of these. But being as I could use a little bit of health, it's okay, because every 1 strength grants 2 life. So, you know, getting a little extra 10 health here, not a bad thing overall. You'll get life as you level up and that kind of thing. But mostly I went dexterity because that's what my gear is going to be based around. That's what my bow skills are going to be based around. And just you get evasion from that. And that's how this character is going to play. But yeah, quick touch on that. Strength is going to give you 2 life per strength. And then it's also going to be the attribute that is related to armor. So if something has an armor defense bonus, you can see up there it has armor and evasion. I need strength and dexterity. So I need both. If something is just a pure strength item, it's probably going to be more strength than this one is asking for. If you're going for dexterity, that's going to give you accuracy rating and is going to be based around gear that needs evasion rating. And then for intelligence, that's going to give you energy shield for your gear stat. And then it's also going to give you some mana. So witches, sorcerers, those are going to be more intelligence based. The mercenary, dexterity, a little bit more dexterity based. Then you've got the monk and other things. So everything's going to kind of have this like Venn diagram as you move around the stat pools. The ranger is going to be pure dexterity, but I could see the monk being strength and dexterity. And then I could see the, I could see the mercenary being strength and dexterity kind of mixed. And then I could see the monk being dexterity and intelligence. Kind of makes sense anyway. That is kind of where your base stats and gear and stuff are going to factor in. Now, when it comes to skills themselves, you're going to get skill gems. They look like these. Uncut skill gem. When you right click on it, you're going to see the optional skills that are possible. That is the one that I'm looking at here is a level 5 by Roman numeral. I could use this skill gem to equip it to anything in these 3 categories. And since I'm using a bow, this is the weapon that's going to be able to use those skill gems. If I switch to quarterstaff, I have the wrong weapon type. Also, I don't have the intelligence required, so that makes sense. But what each skill gem is going to do, like you're just going to get level 1 first, and you're going to go level 1 skills. And if you engrave it, you can see that if I put Toxic Growth, I can engrave it with that skill gem. And then if I equip that gem, I can access this Toxic Growth skill and use it. So take this, for example, Barrage. Barrage is going to be a spell that will basically last until, and what it does is it allows me to kind of repeat a spell. And I've got a spell called Snipe, which is a big damage spell. So what I could do, I could equip Barrage, I could cast Barrage, and then when I go to cast Snipe, it's going to basically double that shot. And you can see the DPS on that one's huge. So it's actually going to be a really big shot, and it doubles it up. That's pretty much how you get a skill. When you get a higher level, like here's a level 6, for example. I could go Barrage level 6, and that's an option. I would level it up. It's going to have a little bit more mana costs, but as you can see, the attack time, the damage, it's going to change the stats of the ability. But what I currently have in there is Escape Shot. Now, Escape Shot is cold. I jump back. It basically allows me to kind of jump up in the air, shoot a freezing burst at the ground, and I'm good. And you'll see here, Frost Nexus is a support gem. Now, what that's going to do is its supported skills create chilled ground for 4 seconds when they freeze an enemy. There you go. So it's going to chill ground if it freezes an enemy. Question is, will it freeze an enemy? Well, this one probably will, because it's going to cause freeze buildup with what's on the ground, chill them, freeze them, and if that happens, it's going to cause the ground to do that, and it's going to cause even more to get chilled. So, this is a support gem. This is how you modify your skills. Now, I have one up here for my regular basic bow shot. Let me go back to where I was. My basic bow shot right now does 2 things. It has lightning infusion, and it also poisons. So it literally has 60% chance to poison on hit, and also supported attacks gain 25% of damage as lightning. And the only problem is it will do less cold and fire damage because I have this trigger on here. So you just kind of have to keep the full description in mind sometimes. You also notice it says supported requirements right up here. And it says dexterity. I need 40 dexterity to be able to use this support gem because of, like, it's a level 7 skill. So you're not likely to out-level your base skills. Like if I'm a ranger and I'm using dexterity, I'm using bow skills, pretty straightforward, gonna be fine. If you try and branch out to try and do some weird build, that's where you just gotta be careful and watch that stuff. The other thing to note is when it comes to your skills themselves, you have a limit. So right now, I can only equip 4 strength-based support gems. I can equip 20 dexterity, and I can only equip 3 intellect, and I've got all 3 of them equipped that I can possibly use. So when it comes to a support gem, it looks like this. You'll take support gem, you'll go to cut it, and then you're going to pick which skill you want it to attach to. Poison Burst Arrow, for example. Right now I've got Bursting Plague and Corrosion, not too shabby. Snipe, I've got an opening. So right now I've got the window of opportunity. If I land it correctly, that's going to do more damage. Wind Wave, trigger Wind Wave when stunned while using supporting skills. So you're like, okay, what is Wind Wave? Click in here, knocks back enemies, knock back enemies on hit. So if I'm trying to do a big charge up and I get stunned, it's actually going to do a knockback effect, which in essence would be kind of cool. But that's probably not really what I want to go for. Probably going to want to do something else later on. But that's not a bad option. It's really not. But this is just the recommended skills. If I want to open the gates a little bit here, I can look at a lot more. So you'll kind of notice the green ones are going to be dexterity related. The red ones are going to be strength related. And the blue ones, typically, if I've got any, but, you know, they're going to be a little mixed. So here's Innervate, for example. This is going to take 5 dexterity. Attacks taking 35% damage as lightning damage for 3 seconds on killing a shocked enemy with supported skills. So it's a little bit of a combination. I got to kill a shocked enemy, then I've got a chance to boost attacks. So this might actually work well on a different skill, but I wouldn't have known that if I took the recommended off. But I will tell you, again, if you're playing this game for the first time, working within the recommended wheelhouse is not a bad way to go. Vine Arrow, for example, it's one I use frequently to kind of share debuffs to a bunch of enemies. Well, Encumbrance, debuffs inflicted with support skills, now they're going to get slowed. So they're going to get slowed somewhat, they're going to get slowed even more, and then as more stuff unlocks at higher support skills, I'm going to get a chance to get some different things down here. But supports are basically a way to modify your spells, but you can only equip one support gem in one spot. So if this is my lightning infusion, for example, I can have it on my regular bow shot, I can put it down here on snipe, but I can't have 2 lightning infusions. You only get 1. So that's where figuring out the best place for it could be a bit of trial and error. Some experimentation is not a bad idea. I do recommend experimenting quite a bit. Final thing we've got over here is a Spirit Gem. Now, at level 4, you're going to get a Spirit Gem. So far, I've got the Herald of Thunder. So if I come over here, you can see this thing spinning. Remember when I told you on the waypoints to get your 30 Spirit by killing this guy? That's the 30 Spirit that I currently have used up. So it's right here, I have 30 of 30. Want to activate it, that uses my 30. But basically what this is like an aura, a constant buff, kind of a persistent thing. If I kill enemies that are shocked, then my next 2 attacks are going to do like big lightning bolts that come down. So that's just on all the time. If I get more spirit, maybe I could have, you know, a second buff on top of me later on. So we'll just have to see how that one plays out. But that's where your spirit will come in. That's also why you want to make sure you explore those maps a little bit. So you're going to have skill gems at a level. And again, you can go back to your basic stuff at level 1, and you still want to level that stuff up. And if I choose to do that, all it would do is take this level 6 gem, cut it as lightning rod, and level up the current one that I have. It would still use up the gem, so you gotta remember, if you're not seeing that many, where do you want to spend them? Again, if I want to at least get something to level 5, I could unlock these. The support gems, these are going to be all the different ways that you can modify your abilities. And remember, if you undo the recommendation, you can see a lot more. Just be careful that you're doing things that are going to work with your stats, that are going to work with your build, and that actually kind of play into what your typical skills are. Because like Brutality or Break Endurance or Eternal Flame may not really be something that plays with my abilities and could be a waste for like a decent amount of time. So be careful where you do the, you know, if you venture out off the beaten path, just be weary that you know what you're doing. And then your supports again are these kind of buffs. You'll get more as you go. So it looks like I get them at 4, 8, and then 14 is where I'm going to get some of these buffs, really high level things. All of this is going to be kind of a thing that happens over time that you'll get more and more options. I would say the last couple of things are, if you find boots with movement speed actually is really kind of a nice thing to have in this game. So if you get a pair of boots that you like make magical and it's got movement speed on it, that might be the one that you sit there and end up rolling a rare, because the movement speed is a pretty good base to start off with. Another quick thing, if you're just getting to a point where you're like, I just want to farm a boss, I'm comfortable beating him, he's dropping some decent stuff, and maybe he's around the level that I want to fight. Well, if I want to go into Freythorn, and maybe I want a different instance, well, if you hold control and then click, you can actually see your instance manager. So if I'm going to go into Freythorn, that's going to be a new instance. But if I'm going to go back to Clearfall where I just was, I have the old instance that I was in, or I can make a brand new one and farm it again. So if you're looking to farm some places, you can use the instant manager this way. And this also is one of those things that says, if you're sitting in town, like I currently am, and I've got a portal open, for example, if I sit in town for like 15, 20 minutes, go, eat some food, take a break, that portal's going to go away because that instance is going to be gone, and you're going to have to go back to the waypoint, go back to the beginning of that destination, and clear it out again. So just be aware that if you can't get a full clear going at that point in time, and you're going to leave for a little while, you're just going to lose out on that instance, and it is just a time-based thing. That's all it is. Another little thing, whenever you click on the well, you'll see this red and blue kind of aura that pops up around me.
Shocking.
Well, that's your flasks. And if you find a flask in the wild and you pick it up, it's going to be empty, because they don't fill up until you hit a well, or if you're roaming around a level and you see a checkpoint, that will fill them up. And you might find one in the wild that's a really a upgrade. So if I've got a grand one, maybe there's one above that. And if I find it in the wild and then maybe say I identify it and it's really good, I don't want to try and put it on because it's going to empty out the charges that I currently have. But if you see a checkpoint little kind of pillar coming up, and you'll recognize what once they look like after a little while, if you see one of those coming up and you've got it on you, well, then you could equip it then. It's also very simple just to portal back, switch the flask, hit the well, and then you're good to go. One thing to know, flasks cannot turn into rare. They are just going to be magical, so if you get something that's got a couple good rolls on magical, that's actually not a bad way to spend some of your orbs of transmutation to modify a couple of high-level flasks that you can get, because it's actually going to be worth the payoff. Like this one right here, I've got a big amount of healed, and I get more charges than I normally would. Same thing here, I think, actually. Yeah, more charges and then a big heal, or a big mana boost. So that's actually not a bad place to spend some of your orbs of transmutation, because these only cap out on magical. So if you get a roll on one of them and it looks pretty good, it's not a bad way to get a good, canister, and you'll be able to use that for a little while. But I think that covers a lot to get all of you going and kind of off the ground. The skill tree is daunting, but if you kind of go in the direction that your character is generally looking like they're going to go, see what works for your playstyle. Like over here, I could branch off and go for more projectile damage. That might actually be worthwhile. But if I come out here and I want to do something more with piercing or chaining damage or maybe poison, I could lean into that a little bit more as well. And it really just kind of depends where you want to go. Your gold will eventually get there. It's a little slow at first, and I'm hoping, I will say, that they make the cost of refunding these things a little bit cheaper as you go, so it's not so much of a pain to experiment. So early on, just kind of pick the things that seem to make sense with your build. Don't branch too far off. Later on, make another character, go a little crazy with it, then you can do that. It's just going to kind of come in time and tuning of the game and early access and all of those things. But there's a lot in here. I think it's actually really cool. I'm not going to say the game is easy, but as you gear up and you get comfortable in your dodges and you understand boss mechanics, the fights get manageable, and then you just got to execute. That's the biggest thing I'll say. But if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like below. Leave a comment if I forgot to say something, because I know there's more. There's even another one where if you left click on the hooded one, he'll actually identify the stuff that you've got, I think they said. So that's one way. It's like shift click or left click on him, so you can mess with that as well. There's things that I'm probably not going to mention every single tip in here. That's what the comments are for. If there's good ones, give them thumbs up and help them out. If you want to find me on Twitch, I'll be streaming on Twitch. If you enjoy the channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit the alert bell, and hopefully I'll see you back here. I'll be covering a lot of Path of Exile for December, because that's probably what I'm going to be playing for quite a bit of time here. So hope to see you back, and have a good one.